You ever notice how some celebrity moments get lost for years, and then out of nowhere, they magically resurface when the internet needs chaos the most? Because allegedly, that's exactly what's happening right now with Cardi B and Nicki Minaj. For years, everybody's heard the stories: the NYFW party, the tension, the yelling, the security rush, the infamous shoe situation, and Cardi walking out with that headline-making bump. But the one thing the culture has always argued about is what happened in those seconds the cameras didn't catch. Who swung, who got touched, and what security actually shut down. Now people online are claiming there's hidden fight footage floating around again. Different angle, clearer audio, and allegedly showing what really popped off in that crowd. And today, we're breaking down the full timeline. What led up to it, what reportedly happened inside that party, what both sides said afterward, and why this story refuses to die. Because the stakes weren't just ego, it was careers, fan bases, industry power, and lines that allegedly got crossed involving family. So lock in, because the receipts that exist publicly are already messy, and the reactions are even worse. To understand why any leaked angle would blow up today, you gotta remember what Cardi and Nicki represented in that era. Nicki Minaj wasn't just a top female rapper, she was the dominant figure in mainstream rap for years. A whole generation grew up with Nicki being the final boss, the blueprint, the gatekeeper, depending on who you ask. Then Cardi B shows up and does the impossible. She takes a reality TV to rap pipeline and turns it into a chart takeover. And not in a quiet way, Cardi came loud, funny, unpredictable, and most importantly, she came with momentum that the industry couldn't ignore. Now put two superstars in the same lane, both with passionate fan bases, both competing for cultural dominance, and you get tension, even if nobody says it out loud at first. Things got even more sensitive once collaborations and who got credit conversations started bubbling. People still point to that era where fans and blogs were dissecting interviews, lyrics, side eyes, and who was liking what online. And the reason it mattered is simple. In hip hop, perception becomes reality. If the public thinks you got played, you gotta respond. If the public thinks you're scared, you gotta overcompensate. And when the internet starts framing it like there can only be one at the top, everything turns personal, fast. Then came the night that turned the whole situation from rap talk into real-world headlines. That New York Fashion Week event tied to Harper's Bazaar icons, where Cardi and Nicki were both present, and things reportedly went left. Before we get into the minute-by-minute breakdown, let's drop the first public receipt clip that helps set the stage for how the world originally saw this moment.
Hold tight, I got it. Hold tight. Hold tight, hold tight.
Bitch, come here. Bitch, come here.
One to all units. Second floor terrace room ASAP. One to all units. Second.
You got him?
Yeah, I got it.
Stay tight. Hold tight. Hold tight. I got you.
One to all units. One to all units. Second floor terrace.
Now the key thing with that clip is it represents the public version of the story. A chaotic moment outside the venue, a security escort, and headlines that made it sound like the fight was the main event of the night. But inside hip-hop, the why matters more than the scuffle itself. Because if the motive is career sabotage, disrespect, or family, then it's not just a fight, it's a statement. So let's get into the main timeline. In the weeks and months leading up to the incident, the atmosphere around both artists was already tense according to long-running commentary online. Anytime Nicki did an interview, people were listening for subliminals. Anytime Cardi spoke, blogs clipped it into 10 different interpretations. And once the internet decides two women have to be enemies, quasi every little moment becomes evidence. And here's what makes it worse. Fashion Week events aren't like concerts. It's not a stage with distance. It's close quarters. Tables, hallways, VIP sections, security lines, everybody packed in a room where one wrong look can start a chain reaction. So when both of them ended up at the same event, people online say it was always going to be tense. Whether the artists planned to avoid each other or not, their entourages, friends, and industry people are all swirling together in the same space, and the energy gets contagious. This is where things get tricky because the internet has seen multiple edits and angles over time. Some clips show the aftermath, some show movement in the crowd, and some are just audio with people yelling. But one of the big moments is when news-style YouTube uploads started circulating quickly after the event, cementing the story in pop culture as that night Cardi and Nicki fought.
But when these two beauties crossed paths, watch out, an ugly melee ensued. One report says Nicki deliberately stepped on Cardi's train and then said something nasty about Cardi's baby daughter. New footage of the fight is surfacing. You can see Cardi stumbling across the hallway, held back by her security team. Suddenly, she lunges for Nicki, who is shielded by her security team. Moments later, there's Cardi undoing her shoe, then throwing it at Nicki. Nicki's team kept the shoe as Exhibit A. Cardi's gown was ripped in the back, exposing her backside. Her bodyguards quickly covered her with what's left of the gown.
Now, the reason that matters is because once the story becomes a news package, it stops being about what actually happened and becomes about what the public believes happened. And that's exactly why alleged hidden footage gets people obsessed. They want the missing piece that proves their side right. According to the most repeated version of the story, Cardi felt that lines had been crossed behind the scenes, specifically involving comments about her as a mother and about her child. That's the part that tends to turn industry tension into on-site. Now, we have to be careful here. The internet mixes allegations, interpretations, and hearsay, but what's consistent is that Cardi publicly framed her anger as something deeper than rap competition. And from a hip-hop psychology standpoint, that matters, because when somebody says, "Honest, this is beyond music," it's usually code for, "I'm not doing PR anymore. I'm reacting as a person." After the incident, Cardi's side of the story didn't just live in articles, it lived in social media reactions and reposts that fans watched like episodes of a series. You had uploads pulling from Cardi's IG responses and explaining her stance as her saying she'd been letting things slide.
How you saying that I got ragged by Riley when there's so many footages of that night, every single angle, and where am I getting ragged at? How you say that I was the wild animal, that I attacked you, that you was mortified, that you was humiliated, playing the victim, but now you're the gangster? You need to pick a side. Do you want to be the victim or do you want to be the gangster? You lie so much you can't even keep up with your fucking lies. I thought you was the victim. I know what there's footage of. You standing on the wall talking about, "I'm standing right here, Miss Chung Lee, the street fighter." Get the fuck out.
A recap video focused on Cardi responding and the controversy around what she said online. And whether you're Team Cardi or Team Nicki, that moment becomes a turning point because it sets the tone. Cardi's basically telling the world she's not going to keep absorbing shots quietly. This is where the alleged hidden footage obsession really comes from, because most of what the public saw was either the commotion or Cardi being escorted out or Nicki leaving without visible damage. So people started arguing about what actually happened in the middle. Did anybody actually connect? Was it just security chaos? Did someone else get involved? Did Cardi get hit? Or did she hit something while being restrained? Different accounts floated, and none of them shut the argument down completely. And once a story becomes a never-ending argument, it becomes perfect content bait, because if you drop even a slightly different angle years later, it changes everything for the fans who still want to litigate the moment. So when people online claim new angles are resurfacing, maybe from inside the venue, maybe from somebody's phone, maybe from a guest who never uploaded it, everybody reacts like it's a court exhibit. Nicki has addressed the incident publicly over time, including coverage of her discussing it on Queen Radio. Many recap videos emphasize how she framed it as humiliating and mortifying to have that kind of moment become a spectacle.
Remember, it was Cardi who attacked Nicki Friday night at the Icon party at the Plaza Hotel here in New York. Well, Nicki went on her radio show yesterday and said she would never talk about anyone's child. Well, this is Cardi was saying, you talked about my child and that's why, I'm wiling out on you. So she unleashed on Cardi. Just take a listen to this.
I was a part of something so mortifying and so humiliating to go through in front of a bunch of upper echelon people. The way they passed by looking at this disgusting commotion, I will never forget. I was mortified. This woman is at the best stage in her career and she's out here throwing bottles and throwing shoes? Who the gonna give her intervention? This ain't funny? You put your hands on certain people, you gon' die.
Now from Nicki's perspective, at least as publicly portrayed, there's a big difference between rap beef and being pulled into a public brawl narrative that turns into memes. Because when you're a global superstar, your brand is control, and any moment that makes you look like you're in chaos, even if you didn't swing, is still damaging. So you have two sides. Cardi's side allegedly saying, you crossed a line. Nicki's side allegedly saying, this was a spectacle and I'm not playing into it. And that clash in framing is why the story never fully ended. So why would an alleged hidden fight clip matter today? Because both of their careers have moved into new eras. They've both had massive wins, huge controversies, shifting public narratives, and new rivalries. But the Nicki versus Cardi story is like an unresolved case file the internet refuses to close. If anything resurfaces that looks like proof, fans will use it as ammunition to rewrite history. And here's the kicker. The footage doesn't even have to be a clean Hollywood angle. In 2026 internet culture, even a shaky 7-second clip with muffled audio can go viral if it looks like it confirms what one side has been arguing for years. So when people say, it finally leaked, the psychology is, we're about to relive 2018 like it just happened. At this point, the story has two lanes: the actual known events from coverage and the never-ending reaction economy that keeps reanimating it. Because every time Nicki speaks on respect, people bring up Cardi. Every time Cardi says she's standing on business, people bring up Nicki. And every time a blog account posts new footage, the fan base is mobilized like it's wartime. One of the biggest receipt moments that still gets referenced is when radio and media personalities broke down the beef like it was a weekly sports debate.
Alright guys, so the beef between Nicki Minaj and Cardi B continued. Yesterday evening, Cardi B jumped on Instagram to get back at Nicki, who threw some shots during her latest episode of Queen Radio on Apple Music. And in the Instagram videos, Cardi kind of wants to set her version of the story straight about the confrontation at the Harper's Bazaar party with Nicki. Remember when she threw the shoe? Check this audio out.
Then since you're talking about suing and shit because you claiming that Riley beat me up, sis, I don't gotta sue nobody because of a fight. I'm a street bitch. That is called snitching, you know? But since you want to talk about suing, maybe I should sue you for defamation of character. Since you want to claim that I'm using something illegal called payola because you don't understand.
Ebro in the morning discussing the Cardi B and Nicki Minaj beef. And the reason those discussions matter is because they shape how casual viewers interpret it. When big platforms talk about it, the narrative becomes official, even if it's still based on reported details. Now let's talk about reactions. Because in Rap Daily World, reactions are half the story. When alleged new angles circulate, the comments usually split into predictable camps. One side says, Nicki never needed to fight, she's above it. Another side says, Cardi stood on her principles and that's that. Then you have the third group, the chaos fans, who don't care who's right, they just want the most dramatic explanation possible. And the funniest part, a lot of people online don't even argue the facts anymore. They argue the vibe. Who looked more composed? Guys, who had better PR after? Who won the internet? Then you have podcasters who revisit it every time there's a slow news week because it's guaranteed engagement.
It's really a lot to get to here somehow.
You know what's funny? I'm gonna tell you
all of it.
You're right, but
all of it is very funny.
It's so funny to me where we're at in hip hop. It seems like the women are so much more thorough than the men right now.
And Mom just always looks to diss the men in hip hop.
Oh no, but you gotta think about it. Just really sit back and think about it for a second.
There's 4 of them.
Which makes them probably even more thorough.
This is what I'm trying to tell you. Like this,
there's not many options. You couldn't go after just,
All right. Cardi is thorough. We know. Remy, I'm scared. I don't even want to say anything about
no
it.
comment.
She's listening right now.
The Joe Budden podcast discussing the Cardi B and Nicki Minaj situation. And once the podcast world gets involved, the story becomes immortal because podcast clips become TikToks. TikToks become reposts and reposts become new news. So even if the hidden footage is allegedly old, it becomes new again the moment it hits the algorithm. Now let's be real. Does an alleged leaked clip actually change anything for Cardi and Nicki themselves? Maybe not legally and maybe not professionally in a direct way, because because both of them have survived bigger storms than one Fashion Week incident, but what it can change is the temperature online. If the clip looks like Cardi was closer to Nicki than people thought, it fuels the narrative of she really tried to get to her. If the clip looks like security blocked everything before anything happened, it fuels the narrative of it was overhyped. If the clip shows somebody else in the middle, an affiliate, a friend, an unknown person, it could reopen old allegations about who really made contact and why Cardi had that bump. And that's where things get messy, because then the internet starts naming people, blaming people, and dragging folks who weren't even the headline. The most likely outcome is this: if the footage keeps circulating, both fan bases will weaponize it, blogs will repackage it, and you'll see a fresh wave of think pieces like, why we still talk about this in 2026? And if either artist is in rollout mode, music, tour, product, this becomes free controversy that distracts from the business. Also, the industry always watches power. If the narrative shifts in a way that makes one side look more justified, it can influence which side gets more sympathy the next time controversy hits. So what happens next is either A, the clip fades out in 48 hours like most leaks, or B, a bigger platform reposts it and it becomes a full-blown cycle again. Either way, the reason this never dies is because the beef wasn't just personal, it became symbolic, two queens in one lane, and the internet refusing to allow a peaceful coexistence. So now I need you to tell me in the comments, if hidden footage really exists, do you think it's going to prove anything? Or is it just another recycled angle getting repackaged for clicks? If you want the next breakdown, I can do a full timeline on how their feud evolved from industry tension into a culture-wide debate, and what moments allegedly kept re-sparking it over the years. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next video is going to be about another new footage situation that reportedly has the internet divided again, and it might be even messier than this.